There has been an absolute avalanche of news in the last couple of weeks of Destiny 2, and this week's TWAB is basically no different. We get a brand new look at some incoming armor, we get more clarifications about the quality of life changes that are going to be coming in the next few weeks. We've got, of course, the major changes coming to the Crucible and the playlist that we're going to have available, and we even get to check out some in-game armor sets. What's going on, Guardians? My name is The Black Link, and today we're going to be covering all the information that dropped in this week's issue of the Bungie Weekly Blog, This Week at Bungie, for September 5th, 2019. Now, first things first, man, it is good to be back. Thank you guys for your patience. I have been gone for quite some time. You know, I live in Florida. I've been dealing with a bit of a major hurricane going on right now. So over the past week or so, I've been preparing and cleaning up for that. I haven't been able to make much content. But that hurricane is past, it has moved on, and I am back in the game. And of course, while I've been gone, it makes sense that the moment I have to stop making stuff is when all this insane news about in-games and armors and the super changes and weapon changes and new exotics and all that kind of stuff drops. I tell you what, it really just never ends. But let's go ahead and dive on into the stuff that we're learning about this week. Alright, first things first, we're getting a bit of a redux, you know? A retreading of some of the major changes that are going to be coming as part of the quality of life changes that are tied to Shadowkeep. But of course, before that, this week we have got a Mars Community Challenge going on in the game right now. And we have absolutely been destroying that challenge. What was supposed to take a full week for us to get completed has really taken just a couple of days for us to get most of those steps done. Of course, the Mars Community Challenge included challenges like doing 175,000 Wave 7 Escalation Protocol bosses, beating up Nokris and Zal a bunch of times in Nightfalls, killing like a ton of Thrall, and you Guardians have been blowing it out of the water. We're finished with the Escalation Protocol step, and surprisingly enough, we're finished with the Override Frequency step. If you guys remember from a week or so ago, I thought the Override Frequency step was going to be the thing that took us the longest amount of time. But way to go, we're almost done with this community challenge, and upon its completion, of course, everyone who participated, by completing at least one Nightfall before next week's reset, will earn an emblem. And of course, if we manage to get this done, the menagerie is going to be seeing a change. We're going to be getting extra rewards from Daddy Callus. But anyways, great job on the community challenge, Guardians. Although, unfortunately, given how we've probably surprised a lot of Bungie employees, they're probably going to supercharge the next community challenge they decide to throw at us. Which I guess is fine, so long as they make the rewards well worth your while. But anyways, moving on. Next week, we've got a brand new Bungie bounty, and this one's going to be containing some serious gaming royalty. Starting on Tuesday, September 10th, going from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, and Bungie CEO Pete Parsons are going to be in the Destiny 2 Xbox Strike matchmaking queue. Meaning you'll have a chance to play with two major figures in the gaming industry if you get lucky enough with your Strike matchmaking. Join as a single player, and if you happen to get in a party with either of these two and complete a Strike, you'll have access to a special emblem. And probably bigger bragging rights than I think anybody else could ever have. So good luck to you Xbox-based Guardians out there. And for those of you who want to watch, they will of course be live streaming this entire event. They're going to be over at their Mixer page at mixer.com/Bungie. Not too bad at all. Alright, now that the little stuff is out of the way, let's dive into some of the changes we're going to be seeing when Shadowkeep goes live on October 1st. First up, we've got a rundown of some of the information that we learned in previous weeks, specifically some changes coming to Crucible playlists. One, they've of course removed the quick play and competitive nodes from the director. These are of course being replaced with Classic Mix, which is going to be the new connection-based playlist that's like quick play. And Comp is going to be replaced with 3v3 Survival, which is going to award you glory points. And as a part of that Survival playlist, they've also added a Survival solo queue that will also award glory. Next up, 6v6 Control is of course getting its own playlist. And they've added in rotators for weekly 6v6 and 4v4 game modes. But in previous weeks, they also mentioned that some maps were going to be getting removed from certain game modes. This week, we got to learn exactly what those maps are. At least what the first few of them are going to be. The first 4 maps that are being removed from playlists are Dead Cliffs, Legion's Gulch, Retribution, and Solitude. Kind of some surprising names on that list. Either way, Bungie says they're removing these from playlists in order to further tweak their spawn logic and ammo spawns, so that they can flow a bit better in the future. But they're not the only maps that are going to be moving around. Additionally, Equinox is also being removed from most playlists. It's only going to be available now in Scorched, Mayhem, and Breakthrough, and Firebase Echo is only going to be available in Supremacy, Mayhem, and Breakthrough. But don't worry, they're not just taking stuff away from us, at least in the terms of Crucible maps this time around. They're also going to be introducing Widow's Court, Twilight Gap, and the new map, Fragment, which apparently is going to be like the Dreaming City meets Infinite Forest. But if you were to ask me, just eyeballing what it looks like here, the screenshot that we have here looks like almost a picture-perfect remake of the D1 Mars map, Crossroads, which was the map that had like the floating island and the jump gates all over the place, which is fine by me. That was one of my favorite maps from back in Destiny 1, and if this is a recreation of that map, I'll certainly take it here in the world of Destiny 2. Also, Elimination is making its return to Destiny 2 via Crucible Labs. They talked about this in previous weeks. Next up, of course, is heavy ammo. These changes are going to be major. And what's happening with it is, of course, we're moving back to a system similar to what we had in Destiny 1, where when somebody on your team picks up the heavy box, nearby players on their team will also have an opportunity to get heavy, rather than just one person who grabs the box getting heavy. Basically, that heavy ammo sharing mechanic is only going to be available in 6v6 modes. And how it's going to work is once a player picks up heavy, their teammates will have a limited amount of time, currently 7 seconds, to interact with that same ammo crate to get heavy ammo. And of course, when that window of time runs out, the crate itself will expire until the next time it refreshes. They also go on to note that each player is going to get less heavy ammo from these shared crates than they do from unshared crates in 4v4 and 3v3 modes, where heavy ammo is going to work the way it does right now, first come, first serve. So essentially, you're going to get less heavy ammo per crate in 6v6 game modes than you do in 3v3 and 4v4 game modes, but in 6v6 game modes, everybody in your team is going to have an option to pick up heavy from one box. This change was live in the gameplay demo they had over at PAX, and from what I saw, it wasn't too bad at all. Alright, next up, of course, we've got the changes to ranking systems. Basically, Glory, Valor, and Infamy streaks have been made more resilient. And instead of resetting your streaks, losses will now reduce your Valor and Infamy streaks by 1, and your Glory streaks by 2. You can still lose Glory, but if your rank is at or below Fabled, you can't lose Glory if doing so would drop you below that rank. So let's say you hit Fabled. You're doing pretty good in survival, but then you lose a bunch of games. Well, normally right now, if you were to lose enough points, you would drop out of the Fabled rank. When Shadowkeep goes live, that's no longer going to be the case. For Fabled rank and below, you're no longer going to lose your ranking when you lose points. Which is a pretty great change, and it's definitely going to help some of you Guardians out there who are still grinding towards some of those old Crucible Pinnacle weapons. Next up, they're going to be revamping the way the game calculates your overall total skill. This is going to affect how your matchmaking works in the Survival 3v3 game mode. As I understand this, in Season 8, they're changing the way the glory ranks are going to work, and you're going to be assigned to a specific bracket of skill based on all of your currently active stats. And you'll be able to earn accelerated glory points in the Survival playlist if your skill bracket is currently underneath where the game thinks you should be. And then once you reach the ranking that the game believes is right for you, your skill gains are going to normalize a bit. It basically looks like it's going to be a new way for them to kind of calculate overall player skill that hopefully works a bit better than the current glory system does in Destiny 2. But alright, that's it for the retread of quality of life changes. Now comes the meat and potatoes. We get some major Shadowkeep Sandbox ability updates in this week's SWAB, and we're going to go through all of them right now. First up, we've got some major buffs coming to the Night Stalker Way of the Pathfinder. This is the bottom tree. A lot of people have been waiting for these. First up, we've got some changes to Vanish, which is where your smoke bomb can grant invisibility to allies. Now it gives 1 stack of the newly revamped Heart of the Pack ability to all allies hit by the smoke. It also grants plus 34 to armor, recovery, and agility, and gives weapon reload speed and handling. This can stack up to a maximum of 3 times, and it gives you increased invisibility duration from 7 to 8 seconds. Pretty major change if you ask me. Next up, we've got Provision. Killing tethered enemies creates super orbs and increases agility, armor, and recovery for allies. With this, damaging enemies with your grenades reduces the cooldown of your smoke bomb, 6% per damage tick, and making allies invisible gives you grenade energy, 17.5% per ally. Not bad at all. Next are the changes to the Mobius Quiver, which of course allows you to fire your super multiple times and deals massive damage to tethered targets. They've added the old provision perk to naturally be part of the Mobius quiver. This is where killing tethered enemies creates super orbs and grants stacks of Heart of the Pack for allies. We just went over the changes to Heart of the Pack. You get that armor, you get that increased reload speed, it's going to be pretty good. And they've also expanded the range of Heart of the Pack from 20 to 30 meters, meaning more of your teammates are going to get caught up in that. Great change if you ask me. Alright, next up we've got the Shadow Shot super for both the top and the bottom path. Damage has been increased from 150 to 250. This makes it a one-shot kill in PvP. Finally! They've improved tether accuracy near obstacles, and suppress on hit is more consistent. Major changes that Shadow Shot has really needed in PvP, basically since it's been introduced. So I'm very happy to see that they're finally pushing some of that stuff through. But those are the changes coming to Night Stalker. Next up, we have got the Sentinel Code of the Protector. This is top tree for you Void Titans. First up, we've got changes to Defensive Strike, the melee ability that creates an overshield for nearby allies. Now, all kills while the overshield is active grant melee energy for the player with the shield. This works for all allies you grant a shield to. And this is based upon enemy threat level from 5% for minor level enemies to 25% for players and bosses. Not bad. Next up, Rallying Force. Melee kills heal nearby allies. The heal has been buffed from 10 health and 10 shields to 10 health and 20 shields. A 50% increase for the shield part there. After that, we've got changes to Ward of Dawn, which is of course the alternate super that creates your bubble as a shield titan. They've increased the Ward of Dawn health versus supers. Most supers will require the whole thing to be dumped on the ward to destroy it, but will usually not kill the players inside, making Ward of Dawn a bit more consistent, especially out there in PvP. Additionally, Ward now grants Weapons of Light buff when passing through it. This is a 35% weapon damage buff for 15 seconds. That's a major buff out there. And in Shadowkeep, popping your bubble is also going to grant you one additional super orb for a maximum of 3. The auto-generated orbs now grant the same amount of super energy as regular super orbs. Previously, the orbs gave less energy on par with Masterwork orbs. Next up, we've got changes coming to the Sentinel Code of the Aggressor. This is bottom tree. First up are changes to Shield Bash, which is your shoulder charge that disorients nearby enemies. It now suppresses the target hit and any enemy within 2 meters. So big targets that you're hitting or any of the enemies that are right next to those targets are going to have their abilities suppressed for a short period of time when you shield bash them. Great change if you ask me. Next, onto the Warlock Masterclass, we've got some changes coming to Voidwalker, specifically the Attunement of Hunger. This is of course the Devour build. First up we've got Vortex, the Nova Bomb that leaves behind a damaging AoE pool. The initial explosion damage has been increased by 15%, and the lingering damage has also been increased by 15%. Major changes to Vortex. It's been kind of a bit of a lackluster build ever since Top Tree Voidwalker got the major buffs that it has, with the only real benefit of Bottom Tree Voidwalker being the Devour build. So I'm very happy to see Vortex is getting a change. Next up, we've got changes coming to the Dawnblade's Attunement of Grace. This is Middle Tree, for Well of Radiance, which is of course the alternate super that creates a healing buffing field for allies. It now is going to grant an additional super orb, just like the Ward of Dawn, bumping up its orb generation to 3. It's also going to have the same change with the amount of super energy you get back from those orbs. But alright, that's it for the buffs coming to classes. Now we've got to deal with the nerfs. Oh boy, you knew it couldn't all be good. First up, the Night Stalker Way of the Trapper. This is top tree. Shadow Shot seeing a change. This of course fires an arrow that damages enemies and debuffs enemies nearby. Damage sharing for the Night Stalker players specifically has been reduced from 100% to 50%. Now all allied players have 50% damage sharing on Tether rather than 100% damage sharing on Tether. So a bit of a party damage nerf there. Next up for the Night Stalker Way of the Wraith, this is Middle Tree. Flawless Execution seeing a change. This is the ability where headshot kills while crouched grant invisibility and True Sight. True Sight now lasts 3 seconds, down from 9, which I guess I understand. I didn't really use Flawless Execution too often, but getting 9 seconds of invisibility in True Sight is pretty powerful. So that's being tuned down just a bit. Next up, Shattering Strike is also seeing a change. With this ability, after performing a Flawless Execution, your melee attacks have a longer lunge range and weaken enemies. But with the previously mentioned nerf to Flawless Execution, they kind of unintentionally hit Shattering Strike as well. So they gave us an advanced warning that that ability has been nerfed down to 3 seconds as well, but they're going to be fixing that in a later update. That was not their intention. So in patch 4.6.1, they will restore the weaken and lunge range increase to last the entire 9 seconds, regardless of True Sight and the invisibility status from Flawless Execution. Glad they got ahead of that. But alright, that's not the only major nerfs we have to talk about here. You probably heard a bit about this coming out of the people who visited PAX, but we've got some major changes coming to the way we're going to be restoring our ammo in Shadowkeep. Specifically, Rally Barricades and Luna faction rifts are seeing major changes moving forward. Essentially, those instant reloading abilities are being changed. Both Titan's Rally Barricade and the Luna faction rifts are no longer going to instantly reload your weapons. What they're going to do now is grant you a greatly increased reload speed. This is a major player damage output nerf, as you're no longer going to be able to pop either of those abilities and just continue firing at enemies unabated by a magazine size. And while I will say I'm none too pleased with this change, it's not hard to see coming. The amount of damage we've been able to put out since they changed the way Luna faction boots work with Warlock rifts, or they changed the way Rally Barricades worked, have allowed us to erase enemies, I guess, far faster than Bungie ever intended. So it's not too much of a surprise that this major change is on the way. But anyways, we've also got changes coming to the way we're going to be regenerating our supers. We talked about this in previous weeks, and basically Bungie's going to be changing the amount of energy we get back from Orbs of Light. And you can see the overall list of changes here. Basically, they're going to be reducing the amount of energy that comes from certain orbs that are dropped by things like supers or masterworks, in an effort to sort of rein in the amount of super energy players are working with right now. But don't you worry, the pain train doesn't stop there, because the next section is talking about the changes coming to player damage stacking mechanics. We got to hear a little bit about this in previous week's TWABs, but we're getting much more of an explanation for what exactly is going to be changing. As was clarified previously, weapon stacking abilities aren't going to be changing. Stuff like Rampage and Kill Clip or exotic weapons that increase their own damage, those weapon abilities are still going to be able to stack their damage multiplicatively. But player abilities, stuff like Well of Radiance and Hammer Strike and whatnot, are no longer going to be able to stack up to exponentially boost player damage. This is stuff like Empowering Rift, Frontal Assault, Guiding Flame, Sun Warrior, Inertia Override, Well of Radiance, the Illumina and Noble Rounds, and Weapons of Light. And additionally, these abilities are having some of their damage numbers changed. Of course, a notable exception here is the One-Eyed Mask, that's staying the same. But for the rest of the abilities, let's go from top to bottom. First up, Frontal Assault is having its damage reduced from 25% gain to a 20% gain. Same thing for Sun Warrior. For the Warlock's Well of Radiance, bonus damage is now going to be a 25% gain rather than a 35% gain. But for Weapons of Light, for you Void Titans out there, your bonus damage is being shot up from 25% to 35%. So basically, you're going to be the new Well of Radiance. That's it for the damage buff changes. Next up, we've got the enemy debuff changes. These are, of course, the abilities that make enemies more susceptible to your damage. First up, we've got changes for Shadow Shot. Incoming PvE damage has been reduced from 35% to 30%. Incoming PvP damage has been reduced from 55% to 50%. And this effect no longer excludes power weapons. So that's kind of the trade-off there. You deal a bit less damage to enemies, but it now works with heavy weapons. Next up for Tractor Cannon, incoming PvE damage is now 30% for all elements. Previously, it was a 33% buff for non-void elements and a 50% buff for void elements. So that's a pretty major nerf to the Tractor Cannon. Incoming PvP damage is now 50% for all elements. And previously, it was the exact same as before, 33 and a 50% split. So there we go, kind of surprising with a major nerf coming in for the Tractor Cannon, not being able to stack that 50% damage buff. Well, I guess too many swarms of the Raven killed too many raid bosses. Anyways, moving on. Hammer Strike is seeing its incoming PvE damage reduced from a 50% gain to only a 30% gain. Again, a major nerf there. And to compensate, the duration has been increased from 6 seconds to 10 seconds in PvE, so you have more time to deal damage. I wonder if that might actually end up being a DPS gain there. We'll have to go in and do some testing with that. Next up, Shattering Strike's incoming PvE damage is now 30%, down from 50% as well, but it's got the same change as Hammer Strike, with the duration increase from 6 seconds to 10 seconds in PvE. So there we go, that's the changes coming to player damage bonuses as well as damage debuffs against enemies. Some pretty hard-hitting nerfs in there that definitely pierce my soul. But overall, not too much of a surprise given they spoke a bit about this in previous weeks. Next up, we've got the nerfs coming to roaming supers. This is a change a lot of players have been waiting for, of course, because roaming supers are gosh darn ridiculous in terms of the damage resistance they get in PvP. So here's the changes coming to them. First up, super damage resistance has been removed from Masterwork armor entirely. Wow, yikes. Inherent super damage resistance has been lowered by category, which we can see right here. For the low armor supers, we've got Nova Warp, of course, Thunder Crash, Blade Barrage, Nova Bomb, and Well of Radiance. They've had their damage resistance reduced from 54% over to 49%. For the medium armor supers, this is for Daybreak and Hammer of Saul, they've had their damage resistance reduced from 56% to 51%. And finally, for the high armor supers, this is stuff like Fist of Havoc, Burning Maul, Sentinel Shield, Arc Staff, Arc Lightning, and Shadow Shot, they've had their armor reduced from 60% damage reduction to 53% damage reduction. And of course, Spectral Blades, Golden Gun, and Chaos Reach haven't really seen a change at all. Which is good. If Golden Gun saw any sort of change, they would die to a light breeze. So happy to see they didn't make any changes on those fronts. But hopefully this damage resistance change is going to make dealing with roaming supers in Crucible a little bit easier. Got to talk a bit with Nim, who said that it was definitely noticeable how easy it was to kill people in their super while he got to play the game at PAX. So happy to see those changes finally coming in. And of course, they note that next week we'll be taking a look at how your arsenal of weaponry will be changing in Shadowkeep. But alright, we're almost done, Guardians, I promise. The final thing we get to cover in this week's TWAB video is, of course, the armor that we're going to be chasing after when Shadowkeep goes live. There's been a lot of talk about armor over the past week or so as people have been confused. What armor is going to be tied to the raid? What armor is going to be tied to in-game activities? What armor is going to be tied to Eververse? Well, Bungie went ahead and clarified all of that, surprisingly so, at PAX and of course in this week's TWAB for all of us plebs who didn't get to go. So let's go ahead and jump on in and take a look at the armor we're going to be earning in Shadowkeep. First up, we've got the Dreambane armor set. This is going to be acquired from Activities on the Moon. This is the armor we got to see in a lot of promotional material and of course in the Vidoc and the trailers that we've had for Shadowkeep. It'll be the new Patrol Zone armor set. Next up, we get a look at the Garden of Salvation raid armor set. We got to see a bit of this at PAX and we get a better look at it here. And while yes, it is technically a rebuild of the Curse of Osiris Eververse armor, I think it's different enough and cool enough looking that I'm certainly going to be going after it. I kinda hope they do what they did with the Solstice of Heroes armor and add like some kind of glow ability to it, since that's a system I'd love to see them use moving forward. Not too bad at all. And next up, we've got the Substitutional armor set. This is going to be acquired from seasonal activities, free season rank rewards, and premium season rank rewards. For those who don't know, we're getting kind of a season pass sort of system with Shadowkeep, which is going to have items and gear that you can earn just for owning Shadowkeep over the course of the season, and of course a set of premium gear that you can earn if you own the season pass. Either way, looks pretty good to me. Next up, we've got the Phenotype Plasticity Universal Ornament set. This is the one where people were confused and wondering if it was going to be the raid armor set. This can be acquired from premium season rank rewards, so you will need to own the season pass to get access to this armor set right now. Or at least when Shadowkeep goes live. And man, that Titan armor looks something fierce. I love the arm blades you've got on there. Definitely a decent looking armor set. After that, we've got the incoming Iron Banner armor for Season 8, the Iron Will set. This, of course, you can earn by participating in the Iron Banner. And hopefully it too is going to be compatible with some of the ornaments from previous Iron Banners. After that, we've got the Imprian Cartographer Universal Ornament set. This can be acquired from the Eververse store, which means we finally got confirmation of which is going to be the Eververse set, which is going to be the Season Pass set, and which is going to be the Raid Armor set. So hopefully that conversation can finally come to a close. A lot of people were a bit upset about that. Anyways, the Eververse set's looking pretty good, and I love that these sets are going to be all ornaments now. That makes it a lot easier on my overall vault space. But there we go. That's it for the new armor sets that are going to be dropping as a part of the Shadowkeep Season 8 release. But of course, in addition to all of that, all of the currently available legendary armor from vendors is going to be upgraded to Armor 2.0 when Shadowkeep launches, and we get a list of how exactly that's going to work here. We've got Armor 2.0 reprisals of the Crucible Year 1 gear, including the Year 1 ornaments, the Vanguard Year 1 gear, the Black Armory Forge gear, the Gambit gear from Forsaken, and the Gambit Prime gear from Season of the Drifter. All of the Menagerie gear is going to be Armor 2.0. All of the Raid gear is going to be Armor 2.0, so yes, you can go back into the Leviathan, get a brand new set of armor from that that's going to be Armor 2.0 compatible. And of course, every bit of destination gear is also going to be Armor 2.0 compatible. So that's stuff for the European Dead Zone, Titan, Nessus, Io, Mercury, Mars for the Vendor and Escalation Protocol gear, the Tangled Shore, and the Dreaming City. There will also be additional world drops that can be found in legendary engrams, which have been upgraded to Armor 2.0. So most of the armor sets in the game are going to be Armor 2.0 compatible right when Shadowkeep goes live. Meaning it's very likely that your favorite armor sets available in the game right now are going to have an Armor 2.0 compatible version when Shadowkeep goes live. Great to hear. But alright Guardians, that's pretty much it for the biggest bits of news to drop in this week's issue of the Bungie Weekly blog, This Week at Bungie. Towards the end of the TWAB, we get one other major change. We're going to be learning a bit more about some weapon changes in the future, including changes to the exotic hand cannon Sunshot. It's getting 12 shots in the magazine, and of course Graviton Lance is getting a 30% PvE damage buff. That's super exciting stuff, and I can't wait to learn more in the future. But that's all we've got to cover right now. This video has gone on way too long, but what do you expect? I haven't been able to do this for like a week and a half. So of course I'm going to sit here and chat your ear off on everything we got to learn this week. But that's it for the big stuff. Those are my thoughts. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. Are you caught up with all the information that's come out of PAX? Did you get a chance to see the new exotics? How do you feel about some of the buffs and nerfs covered in this video? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. But alright, that is it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.